We are fortunate to have the great one with us, Mr. Mike DeCourcy from Sporting News, Big Ten Network, as well as our good friend Dustin Schutte sitting in with me as always. Mike, you had a piece up, but I was already mentioning Rick Pitino at St. John's. Boy, I mean, you talk about putting him. Is there a more fitting place for him to end his career? If this is the end of his career, God knows he could outcoach God. Who knows? He seems like he could last forever. This man is 70 years old and has the energy of any, as much as any young coach going right now still. And in the break, I was talking to Mike that he reminds me of Jack McKinney when they're in the TV series Winning Time. He just sees the game with all these formulas floating around. And that's how I see Pitino. He has one of these brains that is just one of the most intellectual ever for college basketball, along with Bob Knight. There are some guys that have just transcended this game in this sport. College basketball doesn't always work at the next level. Everything's different, but for that level, man, and he loves it. He just, like, you can tell he still loves playing, whether it's chess, whatever you can tell he loves that competition.
Yeah, I think that you're talking about one of the best tacticians in the history of the game. I say there's never been anybody better. There may be some tied for first, but from a tactical standpoint, and fans, the public, tend to equate tactical excellence with coaching excellence. And in college basketball, that's not 100% true, because what it misses is that the college basketball coach has about 15 other jobs to do at the same time as tactically dealing with a particular game. I mean, they play 35 games a year ballpark, and that's 2 hours times 35. So that's 70 hours out of a year. Those are very important 70 hours, but there's so much else that a college basketball coach has to do. Even now with people like Villanova and Duke hiring general managers to help run their programs. I mean, let's be honest, the head coaches are still the GMs. They're still the highest player personnel executive in those programs. I mean, you're hiring a general manager and you're calling him him or her a general manager. Duke's GM is a woman. You're calling them GM, but they're not telling the head coaches who is going to be on the team, who to recruit or whatever. They're just helping facilitate all of the various moving parts. So there's that part of it. And that's probably the most important part of every college basketball coach's job, is that GM role, that running the player personnel. And then there's the I don't know what you'd call it, the babysitting part of it, or whatever you want to call it, where they have to make sure that their players are behaving properly and going to class, properly disciplined, both academically and personally. There's so many different parts of it. But when you get down to just those 2 hours or the 3 hours in practice in terms of player development, Pitino's as good as there's ever been in both of those categories.
Well, and I think, too, his ability to evolve with the game and have an open mind. I mean, I think of, and this is not to knock the guy because he was an excellent basketball coach, but I think of a guy like Al Skinner, who was a really good basketball coach at Boston College, but he was running the power flex in 2017. Like, that just doesn't work. And I think that sometimes coaches get so in their own way, maybe sometimes too stubborn to evolve with the game. Whereas with Rick Pitino and some of these other guys, that's what makes them great, because they are willing to adjust and obviously it helps when you're able to recruit talent and get talented guys on your roster, but their ability to adapt with the game, I think, is what makes Pitino, why he's still coaching and getting into the NCAA tournament and having successful runs at this age.
Yeah, I mean, Pitino, you look at someone that was decades ahead in embrace of the three-point shot.
Right.
And even he, it was more profound than everyone else, which gave them advantage, which helped them get to the 87 Final Four from Providence. Their success with the three-point shot. But obviously what Steph did and Steve Kerr did in the latter part of the tens. What do you call them? The O's? I don't know. The aughts.
They're the aughts. Yes.
How do you? I was trying to do the thing. How do you write out 20 teens the other day? I was trying to write. I just wrote 20-teens.
Yeah, it's brutal. But anyway, what Steph and those guys did changed the game. Even took it even further and advanced it even further in terms of the perimeter game, et cetera. But he was very early on in adopting that emphasis on the perimeter and has had great success with it.
Yeah, Bob Knight was someone who was kind of the opposite, but quickly learned that was something that worked to his advantage. And you talk about Bob Knight. There's two guys that were very, very, very different in style, but both just as successful in different ways. And that's Bob Knight chased perfection, I guess, is the best way to say it. How he coached the team, he perfect, do it right or do it not. There is no such thing as perfection, but if you chase it, you get as close as you can. But I think that was a different style. How would you describe them? Stylish difference as far as how they attacked the game of college basketball. Obviously, defense was Knight's calling card, but his offense was not exactly bad.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I've talked about in the past is how when I was younger and you'd watch a game from Assembly Hall. Do you remember? This is probably too old time for you, Dustin. But back then, when I in my 20s or like the camera angle at Assembly Hall was so bad. Like you were looking at it like there was almost no lift. You were looking at it so like all you saw was a bunch of legs and like it's all mixed together and you couldn't tell what was going on until the ball went into the basket. It was terrible. And then eventually they redid it so that you got up a little bit and now you can see an actual basketball game. But because of that, I had no understanding of Knights, of how it worked, of how their offense worked. And then in '87, the year they won the championship at the Superdome, my buddy got 4 tickets in the lottery, and we were like 20 rows from the top of the Superdome. And this is before you had the big boards and all that. They had a board. It was useless. You might as well have been watching on an iPhone that was all the way across the other stadium. So you had to watch the game had to watch the court and you eventually trained your eye to know when the ball went in or whatever. But I learned so much about how their offense worked. And what I found was that they chased the perfect shot. That was the main thing. Usually that perfect shot was launched by the greatest shooter in college basketball history, Steve Alford. But they worked really hard to get that shot. And that's what I found is that it was all about making sure that whatever shot was taken was the best possible shot. Of course, back then, I think they still had 45 seconds. I think they had a clock then. I know they had 3 by then. The clock came. Yeah, so they had 45 seconds. So they had a lot of time to break down your defense, and they were going to use it if it was necessary. They didn't play slow, but they were gonna work every screen and every angle until they got the exact shot they wanted. And that to me, that was what Bob's offense was all about. I honestly thought that their offense was even better designed than their defense. Their defense got all the pub and all, but their offense was it's probably easier to design a terrific defense than it is a varied and multiple offense. And I thought what I saw that weekend was extraordinary. I mean, they had the 90+ point game against Vegas. That was just one of the best college basketball games I've ever seen. And then the terrific game against Syracuse that came down to Keith Smart's shot. And I want one of the most vivid memories that I have is of looking and you'd see Steve Isle standing on the left wing and you're like, what's he doing there? And then Steve Alford's like on the right baseline. And you're like, after a while, you knew why he was standing there because Steve was going to come running off. Somebody was going to pick off on the baseline. Somebody was going to pick off his defender, and then he was going to run up and curl behind Steve. And there'd be by then if Steve had to block anybody, the help was never getting into the play, and there would be a curl jump shot from Steve. It was a beautiful thing to watch for someone who was learning, who loved basketball and was learning the complexities of the game at that point.